This is TWiT.
The U.S. government threatened to fine Yahoo $250,000 per day if the company didn't comply with a request to share user data with the NSA way back in 2008. Yahoo had refused initially, saying the requests were unconstitutional, but the threat of fine forced Yahoo to ultimately comply. Craig Timberg is a tech reporter for The Washington Post, and Cora Courier is a reporter for The Intercept, and both of them join us now. Thank you, and welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, now let's start with you, Cora. How do we know about this conflict between Yahoo and the government, and why are we learning of it 6 years after the fact?
Well, Yahoo's been pushing to get this information declassified since basically since the case began. The only previous information that was released about it was a 2008 order that was essentially Yahoo's the FISA court's review decision that Yahoo would actually have to comply with this order to turn over user data, and that was out in 2008, and it was a heavily redacted document. So since then, since the case was decided, Yahoo's been asking for it to be declassified, and the government just finished its declassification review in August and has, unsealed the files in the case.
Interesting. Now, Craig, you've been covering this story for quite a while, and of course, Yahoo initially refused on the grounds that the request was unconstitutional in the view of its lawyers. Why did Yahoo believe that? What was unconstitutional about the request from Yahoo's perspective? And what is the current legal consensus about its constitutionality now?
So traditionally, if a government wanted to gather data from a company, it needed to present a search warrant. So we want Craig Timberg's data, this is why, and it would describe what you needed. This order was much broader and more sweeping, and it didn't provide an individual warrant. So rather than asking for Craig Timberg's data, they essentially said, we're going to come to you from time to time over the course of the year and get whatever data we want about people who are outside of the United States. And Yahoo said, no way. This search warrant, you still need a search warrant, still needs to be individualized. There's still a Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. And they fought a legal battle and ultimately lost, not just at the FISA court, but at the appeals level as well. And there's no movement that I know of to challenge that constitutionality again.
Why didn't they, Craig, why didn't they take it to the Supreme Court? I mean, isn't that where we really need to determine these huge constitutional issues?
It's a good question. I mean, the reality, though, is that all of this jurisprudence about surveillance has happened at the FISA court and at the FISA Court of Review. I mean, it was the natural venue for it. So, and that's what's driven civil liberties people so crazy about it. Is like you have all of these rulings that matter an awful lot, and yet nobody really knew, or very few people knew what was in the rulings. They didn't know what the legal arguments behind these decisions were.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing the words FISA court in the Constitution, so it is somewhat vexing. Now, Cora, the case against Yahoo really paved the way for Silicon Valley to really get on board with the whole FISA court and all these NSA requests, didn't it? I mean, this was really one of the first cases, and then once Yahoo was defeated in this, all the other companies came on board as well, didn't they?
Well, we know that this case was sort of the legal footing after which Yahoo started providing data to PRISM, which is the NSA's program to collect internet content of chats and emails and everything from people overseas. And Microsoft had actually come on started providing data to PRISM before Yahoo's court challenge. But as Craig reported in the Washington Post, the government came to the other companies and actually used this Yahoo decision to force them to comply, to force them to start also adding their data to PRISM.
Now, Cora, do you think there's going to be other bombshells in these documents? I mean, they're 1,500 pages, as I understand it. Are there other nuggets in there that The Intercept, for example, is going to be exploring and writing articles about?
Well, we're starting to wade through them. As you noted, there's 1,500 pages, so there's quite a lot to go through. And what's interesting already, just looking, is that in the government's initial order for Yahoo to comply, they've blacked out the number of requests that they were, the number of sort of demands that they were making of Yahoo. So we don't know how many, people were even initially in the request from Yahoo. There's certain technologies that seem to be blacked out, or references to technologies. It's what it looks like, at least. So it'll be interesting in a way almost as interesting as what's in there will be what's not, what the government has tried to keep secret in this, now several-year-old case.
Now, Craig Timberg, I am confused about one aspect of this, of the government strategy. Now, as I understand it, they approached these companies and said, okay, not only must you comply, but you also have to keep this a secret. You can't tell anyone that we're requesting this information, and you can't tell anyone that you're supplying this information. And yet they threatened a fine of $250,000 a day. So let's say Yahoo said, no, we're not going to do it. We'll pay the fine, and then paid millions of dollars in fines. Wouldn't that payment show up in? Wouldn't they be required to divulge that information that they paid that in their financial reports each quarter? How could that have been kept secret if, in fact, they had paid the fine?
It's a good question. I don't have a terrifically good answer for you. I wasn't in the room when they were making those sorts of deliberations. I will say, though, that sure, $250,000 a day fine is a lot of money, but probably the bigger issue is that it's hard for a large, publicly traded company to operate at odds with the law when courts have ruled on matters, very high courts in the land. So in addition to paying a $250,000 a day fine, they would have had to basically say to the U.S. government, we don't respect your, not only do we not respect your orders, we don't respect the courts that have now ordered us as a company to comply with these orders. So that is a pretty difficult legal position for any company to take. And I'm not sure it would have been tenable for very long, particularly without, the possibility of putting public pressure on the government to relent.
Well, I personally find it very disturbing that private corporations are trying to defend the Constitution and the government is trying to overrule it, and even more disturbing that the government is winning that battle, apparently. And so hopefully something will be done, some oversight will be brought to this, and some real oversight will be put on this sort of request in the future. Craig Timberg is of thewashingtonpost.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Craig Timberg. Thank you so much for joining us, Craig.
Thanks for having me on.
And Cora Courier is at theintercept.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Cora Courier. Thanks for joining us, Cora.
Thanks.